Hello, welcome to the first edition of the VMware GemFire Side Chats. Today, I have with me Charlie Black, who is Director Engineering for GemFire. The concept of VMware GemFire Side Chats is we'll speak everything and anything under the sun about GemFire, the product, its features. We'll also deep dive into certain implementation of its features, how you can utilize it in your particular ecosystem. How does it work well within your ecosystem? What sort of use cases does it work for? What are some of the new features which are going to come into the product? What are some of the new releases that are going to come into the product? So anything and everything under the sun about GemFire, we'll try and cover those in the GemFire side chats. Uh, Today, Charlie, let's start with why GemFire? How did it come into being? What was the world like before GemFire came into being?
All right. So GemFire itself dates back to the fall of Enron, right? So this is back in 2002 timeframe. So the concept of GemFire was born back then. Basically, Gemstone system where GemFire was made was the person as the database backing the second commodity, largest commodity out there. So when Enron fell, that company needed to onboard, 5,000-6,000 traders and just scale up. So what they found out is traditional databases were, just not scaling. In fact, they wrote their own original database. There was an object database company. And what they started doing is started moving the database structures from on disk into memory, right? And that got us to a certain scale point. Then the concept of how do we make this better and faster, because we still need to hit another scale point, was the idea of distributed computing, right? So how to get more computers to act as a single computer. Gemstone got acquired and then resold, and then they got to restart what became GemFire. And the second iteration is always better than the first. So that's where GemFire was born. Where we started growing our teeth is on Wall Street. And Wall Street has an appetite for running risk models on a grid, so to speak. And what we wanted to do is scale it out, the data sets, and then run Monte Carlo simulations on here on GemFire. And we were able to take some, overnight calculations that would have run on the traditional databases. And those time to runs would have been somewhere around, 8 to 12 hours. So if there was any hiccups anywhere in the whole analysis of risk, they would have to restart. And if you didn't finish by the bell opening on the next day, you're just running with, an old risk model. So not good. So they would just switch out to in-memory GemFire, and they were able to go from an 8-hour cycle down to like 15 minutes. And eventually it got shorter as they optimized the algorithm. But, that's a huge, huge change. So now they can run intraday risk models, right? And now and more metrics and more features in their computation than they ever had before. So GemFire got a good launch there. And then because of its scale out architecture, we transitioned easily into like the cloud era, right? With just doing basic caching. GemFire is an in-memory database, has optional persistence since the beginning, because we're trying to do official use cases since day one. And it's grown since then. Do you have any questions so far?
What would be interesting to know is this was quite so many years back now. What are some of the important features which have gotten added over the years, and how is it positioned right now in the market? Like, what would you call it? Is it just a cache or is it something else?
We went through a couple of years where we thought about GemFire as just a cache, right? I think we actually launched something called Pivotal Cloud Cache, and that was the idea there. But what we found out is people just still want an in-memory data grid, right? being able to do those ultra low latency use cases, it's still super relevant today, right? Now while there's a good number of our customers still doing caching use cases, and it's totally great to use it like that. Where I find a lot of excitement is in when we have these complex use cases, like you're running risk models, you're updating them daily or interdaily. Think about fraud detection on a credit card swipe, right? That's an easy thing for us to go off and go do. And the scale out nature of that, it might be like 600 nodes of a GemFire cluster running out there in some cloud.
So as I can understand, it's still pretty relevant, and it is being used worldwide by maybe some of the largest enterprises of the world. Can you highlight some of the important use cases which some of the customers have been using, and how is it very important to their particular ecosystem, and how is it business critical to them?
All right, let's talk about, so I did a little bit of work. So I also did services for a little bit. So one of the places that we were selling to some telecoms and basically wanted to make money off of their networks, right? So, because the network was just holding the data there, but sometimes you can add extra services on it, like journey intent, right? Like are my drivers on the right trail, and other things like cell phone, like say your iPhone, right? Certain models of cell phones maybe don't work with a given tower, so we were able to do some of that analytics and figure that out. Right, where we're basically listening to the network streams in real time across a grid of computers, enhancing it with, say, profile information, getting a really good streaming use case out of this, and then being able to say, hey, iPhone's on this thing, or Charlie's in the right area as he's doing his daily thing. And then I think another use case was just selling ads on it. Another one that's in that same tracking, like location-based services. We had a company that would go off and do where are their assets at, right? Like, so if a driver calls in and says, "Hey, I need help with tires," or I just popped the tire, where can we find the vehicle? And that's in there. One of my personal ones that I came from was another tracking use case. Was for the DoD, right, where we were tracking, planes, tanks, and automobiles, and doing it around the globe in many, hundreds of locations.
One of the questions which comes to my mind is, given today where the ease of use is a very high factor in terms of choosing a product, how easy is it for a person who has never used GemFire to implement it in their particular ecosystem? I mean, is it pretty complicated? Do you need to have certain infrastructure in your mind before even thinking of GemFire, or you can just go ahead and implement it on the go?
All right, so I heard like two questions there, so I'll try to hit both of them. Ease of use. So at the end of the day, if you think about coding up with GemFire, it's just a hash map, right? It's just a fancy hash map. So from an application perspective, if you want to store something, it's a put in the hash map. And if you want to get something out, it's a get. Now, of course, we have, query ability and event listeners that you can add in there. But like, let's say for those caching use cases, real easy to adopt. We're also attached to Spring. So we have Spring Data GemFire. And that's for the Spring teams. And if they understand Spring, we easily integrate in there, right? So you want to swap out backends real easy. There's a project called Spring Data, and then that allows you to switch between, say, GemFire, Redis, Mongo, whatever your current data system is, and just be able to switch it out pretty easily. All right, that's like coding. So I'm going to say it's pretty easy. Just a map. Deploying. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. There's at least 3 different ways that we can install GemFire, right? You can just a zip, an archive, where we can just download it, unzip it, and then type, run. That one is my favorite because it can be, whatever your automation system is, we can meet you wherever you are. Super flexible. The other ones that we have is TAS, right? So we have GemFire for Tanzu application service. And what that allows us to do as an on-demand broker, where I can just do CF create, service, and boom, you got a GemFire cluster up and running just by running a simple command. And then updates, right? So the updates can go apply to the cluster. So almost you just download and upload download it from our network, right, from VMware, and then upload it to your Cloud Foundry or TAS, and it will just update GemFire. So really easy to use. And then we also have Kubernetes, right? So if you're in the Kubernetes journey, GemFire can be deployed there using our GemFire operator. Then the operator itself allows simple scaling, right? So if you want to change from a 4-node cluster down, to an 8-node cluster because you need to scale up for holiday season or something like that, easy to do. You just change the number and then GemFire scales out for you. So reduces total operation cost by quite a bit.
Okay, that seems interesting. Now, there is one question which I think many of our folks would like to know. Is today they are spoiled for choices. There are so many options available in the market when it comes to caching or IMDb's. Why should one go for GemFire over some of the others? I know we'll sort of deep dive into this in some of our upcoming sessions, but if you can just highlight, what sort of highlights GemFire over the others.
So early on, because we were doing with a lot of banks and just commodities, stock exchanges, the need for consistency was extremely high, right? So if I do a bank withdrawal of say $100 and the database doesn't reflect that with the consistent model, well, Charlie can go then do some kind of attack and try to reduce my bank account below zero, right? Just keep on taking out I found a vulnerability, I'll just keep on hitting it. So consistency was key. And how to evaluate some of these other distributed systems, there is something called a CAP theorem, right? And what CAP theorem is it's just a provable theorem about distributed computing. And it's evolved over time to have different lenses, but it gets you an idea for that you can only have 3 attributes: consistency, availability, and partition tolerance. Unfortunately, we live in a real world, so you have to have partition tolerance because a partition will happen at some point in time. So you're either available or consistent and partition tolerance, right? So CP, AP, and what AP systems is they're eventually consistent. So let's just say I'm running at a high volume, I bring a node down for maintenance, upgrades, whatever that is, you better have your live data paused because that's eventual consistency. And that could have had some data in a queue that was in memory and you just lost some data, right? So with GemFire, consistency is key, right? So whenever you do a put, that the storage action is based on whatever policy you want, right? So if you want 2 or 3 copies of a data, it'll return after it's satisfied that policy. So it's really important to understand, if you care about your data, you would probably want consistent model versus eventually consistent model.
Just a last follow-up to that question. Have you heard of, in your experience when you were in the field, and even when you have been interacting with the customers, have you seen any customer come back to you and say that, hey, we want to move away from these eventually consistent systems to GemFire just because we have had this loss and we don't want to repeat that again?
Yeah, we've had it. We actually have a product that helps out with certain customers on that journey. We have actually a Redis adapter for GemFire. And what that allows you to do is bring your Redis applications onto GemFire. And now your data is now in a consistent model because Redis is an AP system, right? And GemFire, is in-memory data grid built on consistency. So definitely have a great maturity model. And yes, we have helped customers on their journey, either through like features like our Redis adapter or through Spring data, right, where we just switch out for some disk-based thing and being able to scale up and use GemFire, and likewise just starting a brand new application.
Thank you so much, Charlie. This was a very enlightening session for all of us. And for the audience, if you have any more questions, you can put it down in the comments. We'll try and answer as many of them as possible. And we'll look forward to having you on our next session as well. So keep an eye for that. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.